WNS. An uneventful weekend. I had bus trips and rooms in Providence and Bostonian plans of Italian food in the North End. Luke, those cookies, man, in the North End, they were calling your name. I had a scoop of gelato for you on an 18-degree night there, and you and I would have been in Faneuil Hall. We would have been down there, underneath Fenway Park, imbibing in draft beers and beverages. And we would have been out in parking lot 52 on what turned out to be a beautifully sunny day at Gillette Stadium. And, I had the subs all ready to go for the pregame. I had it I had it all nuanced. And then we didn't show up, and lo and behold, the Chargers didn't either, right? So there's a lot of that over the weekend. These games sort of stunk for the most part. Not the Eagles game, but the rest of the game sort of stunk.
I was just going to say, the Eagles-Saints really saved what was a really blah weekend. And we say this all the time, like, people that are the genuine all-around, love the entire sports world, especially talking the professional major four sports. You talk about divisional round weekend being one of the best weekends in the entire sports year. It's just, you get 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday, the top 2 teams in each conference playing, and they were just a bunch of duds until we got to the late game on Sunday. To tell you how much interest I had in seeing if the Chargers would figure something out in the second half, I went and shoveled my driveway in the second half because that's how little faith I had that
I went mute and caught up with an old friend, and I looked up, and I'm like, how did they get to 20-something? You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things where I was just such a Mike Tyson knockout, like literally, right?
It was kind of sort of now. The Ravens defense played much better against the Chargers offense, but what the Chargers did against the Patriots, kind of sort of reminded me of the Ravens the previous week in the sense that offensively the Ravens had no answers, no adjustments. The Chargers had no answers, no adjustments, and then they scored a little bit late to make it look less of a, now the Ravens made it 1 score and they had the ball back to their credit, but just it felt very lopsided. And Saturday, Kansas City just jumped out to such an early lead and was so emphatic about it that you knew that Indianapolis was probably not getting off the mat, and they never really made it even interesting at any point. Adam Vinatieri finally looked his age kicking the football. And that the Dallas Rams game, it was, it wasn't a blowout, but you never really felt like Dallas was truly going to challenge. But at least the Eagles-Saints game was good. That was entertaining. You thought Nick Foles was going to pull off the magic one more time, and looked that way in the first quarter. But after the first quarter, the Saints, they made the play. They got the big turnover. Drew Brees and that offense came alive just enough, and the Philly offense completely disappeared, and they just couldn't hold on. So overall, a pretty disappointing weekend. Not even for rooting for this team, not rooting for this team. Just 3 out of the 4 games, just not all that terribly competitive or entertaining in the end. And it ended up being chalk. The 1 and 2 seed in each conference goes to the conference championship, and home field advantage and bye week and top scoring offenses, that ended up holding true in the divisional round.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. All of our WNST coverage, and including anything spring training related as well as off-season, all brought to you by our friends at LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute. I was over with Dr. Craig Bennett last week. He got me I'm going to show this casted. Luke, it sort of reminds me of Stan the Man Stasiak when I put it on. It's sort of more of a left-handed Ox Baker, sort of a heart punch thing for you old school, squared circle enthusiasts. But so I have this item now, and it's unbelievable how much it's taken the stress off my elbow. So I'm already a believer. We're going to have Dr. Kevin Crutchfield on doing some concussion and head-related injury work this week. They are the doctors who treat the pro athletes. I had Ben Uchek on. He was singing the praises of Dr. Crutchfield earlier this week as well. You can hear that in the BuyAToyota.com audio vault. World-class care right where you are. You've seen the Cal Ripken commercials as well as on the billboards. It's LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute. We talk to them each and every week, so we get the straight dirt as well. Sporticulture, the flowers around me on the WNST said, always brought to you by our friends at Sporticulture. Always a click away and there. And they got this lava lamp that they are going to send that I'm going to put next to Art Modell and next to my 50th birthday card there. I'm going to have a purple lava lamp from Sporticulture. Learn more about what they do, not just flowers. They do more than that at sporticulture.com. I caught up with Cord over the weekend. It was good to catch up with him. I'm going to be catching up with Lee Tessier soon over a delicious crab cake at Box Hill Pizzeria up there in Abingdon. Baltimore's premier realty team and the folks I'm trusting to sell my condo here in 2019. They stay up to date with all the codes and taxes and real estate and all the state stuff and the federal stuff so that I don't have to worry about all that. People say to me, what's going on with the real estate? Call Lee. Tim's my guy. They know everything. Kind of boggles my mind how much there is to know. Really, honestly. You don't need to know it. All you need to do is know Lee Tessier. Go to leetessier.com. I'm going to be going to Box Hill Pizzeria with Lee Tessier to get a crab cake sometime very, very soon. I'm running very low on Box Hill salad dressing right now, much to my wife's chagrin. Luke is here. We're talking football and a bad weekend of football. Yeah, let's go through the losers just for a minute. I think it's fair to do sort of the requiem for all this because as bad as we felt last week, the Chargers get a dose of that after getting blistered. Obviously, the Colts were not much of a matchup for the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, again, offense. These offenses came out with these tremendous knockout punches, as the Rams did in the second quarter on Saturday night as well. It's amazing when these things are working well, you wonder what we've been watching here for the last half a decade, right?
Yeah, it really does drive home the point that it is an offense-driven league now. It really is. And that's not to say that defense doesn't have value. That's not to say that defense can't still win a championship. But I think it takes a really, really, really special kind of defense in this day and age to endure. So much was made about the Ravens. So much was made about the Bears. And they both bowed out in the first round. And they both played at home and bowed out in the first round. So... but I think, to go back to what you said about the four losers from the weekend, Indianapolis, I think they had a really special run. I think that team is set up pretty well to build on what they did on the second half of the season. And, they had a pretty light schedule if you look at what they were able to accomplish over the second half of the year. Look, it's good for football that Andrew Luck has bounced back. He wasn't good on Saturday by any stretch of the imagination. And I think what we saw from Kansas City, we saw a little bit of that, more so in the second half against the Ravens. That Chiefs defense actually plays some decent, and I want to stress decent because they're not a good defense, but they play just well enough at home that their offense just gets rolling. And, it's really tough to catch up. They jump out to a 17-0 lead, about 18 minutes into the game? That's all she wrote after that. It's just you're not going to catch up, and then your kicker misses kicks, and you make some mistakes, and you're not sustaining drives. It's all over. Indianapolis, really, what happened to them is what they did to Houston, and what happened to the Chargers is kind of what they did to the Ravens, kind of, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
So much for that whole Patriot aging thing, right?
Oh yeah, I said this. I can't remember at what point during the game.
These other teams we knew they were good, like New Orleans, the Rams. We've been in all the Rams-Chiefs game was incredible. The Chiefs are incredible. Mahomes a 50 touch, all of that, and we've just been urinating on the Patriots. And here they are, 60 minutes in a flight out to Kansas City. And, only winning, 35-7 most of the afternoon, right? That we just completely discount them, right? Even when they roll through the Miamis and the Buffaloes and the Jets like hot butter every year and whatnot, and they just, roll onto a bye and roll onto a 2 seed and whatever. And we'll find ways to count them out again this week, but I don't know that I'd be feeling real confident if I were a Chiefs fan based on the way the Patriots played on Sunday.
No doubt about it. I mean, we do this every year, and look, they did look really old and slow at some points during the regular season. But you know what? It's very much like Golden State over the last a couple years ago. They set the record for wins, so I don't want to.
Yeah, the Red Sox don't need to win 116 next year. They just need to win 94 and be in the tournament. That's all they need to do.
It's such a case with Brady and Belichick. And look, they're clearly not bored to the point where they're not still getting a first-round bye, and they're not playing in the divisional round, at least in Foxborough, and so many of these years they've still been the number one seed. But you really get the sense that they kind of know how to do just enough to get through the regular season and know that they're going to have some things happen. They're going to have some injuries. You know, what happened with Josh Gordon. Gronk got old. He's the one guy that you can still kind of point to and say, even though I still wouldn't be surprised to see him make a big play at some point on Sunday or if they get to the Super Bowl. But you just get the sense that they just they have their own cruise control that is still really, really good to the point where they're still overwhelmingly the class of their division and overwhelmingly one of the two best teams in the AFC. And then they get that week off. And a 41-year-old Tom Brady gets that week to get fresh, to refresh physically and mentally. And Bill Belichick, give him an extra week against anybody, I don't like your chances. I mean, that's just the reality. And that's why, even if the Ravens had beaten the Chargers, as much as we talked about this novelty of the Ravens' run game being different than what everyone else is doing offensively, I would not have liked Lamar Jackson and this offense's chances against 2 weeks to prepare Bill Belichick, because say what you want about him, and I call the Patriots Ric Flair. I mean, they're the dirtiest player in the game, and we could certainly point to some of the cheating, non-cheating, controversy.
Yeah, Ben Uchek and I were debating how they do it, and I'm like, they cheat. And can you imagine a week of this comedy in Atlanta 2 weeks from now, and there were 60 minutes away? I have a feeling you're going to get the flu on Sunday night, and I'm going to be in Atlanta alone if we got to talk about Tom Brady all week, and all I'm going to do is bitch to everybody that sits down. But that's what we're all going to be doing, and we're this close to having it happen again.
Sure.
How does it keep happening?
But to finish my point on Ric Flair, even if you take into account the cheating, they're still the best. They still, because cheating doesn't make you 13-3 every year. Cheating doesn't make you the number one seed or the number two seed every single year. Yeah, you might get by here or there. You might cut a corner. But, in the case of Ric Flair, he was a 16-time world champion. And look, I know it's pro wrestling for anyone that's not a wrestling fan, and they're bristling right now. But stay with the analogy. He was the best. And he was the best, even being the dirtiest player in the game. And that's what the Patriots are. And it's not going to be over officially until Tom Brady says he's done. And he's 41. And look, is he the best quarterback in the NFL anymore? No. But would I bet against him at this time of year? No.
What's that song? I'm as good once as I ever was, or like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to be the MVP, and rightfully so. But if we're talking a week from now and 2 weeks from now we're in Atlanta talking about the Patriots again, I'm not going to be surprised in the slightest. I mean, I'm just not going to be. And I was amused by, and quite frankly, people were doing this a few weeks back when before the Steelers beat the Patriots in what was that, week 15. The people were burying the Steelers, and they got off the mat to beat the Patriots, and all the Patriots have recovered, and they're looking very potent and dangerous again. And well, we'll see what happens when they go to Kansas City.
You just said something really interesting. Potent and dangerous. I don't know, man. All these teams are, I don't know who's going to wind up in Atlanta 2 weeks. Right. Like, I look at them and say, I can make a case. I mean, for me, going to be hard to beat Breeze in New Orleans.
Sure.
And the other game's a little bit more of a flippy for me. And I tell you what, the way the Rams front looked I think they're dangerous. I think we'll go back to that game on my 50th birthday when the Ravens had 11 sacks in Nashville, and my wife and I were eating barbecue and throwing back stouts out on the strip on my birthday that night, watching 43-40, in Nashville that night. And I remember, there were a lot of memorable games like that this year. Kansas City and the Rams played one of those on Monday night as well. I think we're going to have high expectations for these games because I think we see them as very evenly matched. I don't expect any 35-7 lead in a game this week. I really don't.
You certainly hope not. I want competitive games. I mean, if the Ravens aren't involved, I want to see good competitive football. I mean, sure, any non-Patriots fan like myself, yeah, I want to see New England lose just because that's what you do. It's just like rooting against the Yankees or rooting against the Cowboys back in the 90s. I mean, that's just what you do, but I want to see good competitive football, and I think you're right. I think this should set up to be that. I mean, I think even though on paper Kansas City looks to be way more potent when you just look at their entire body of work compared to what the Patriots' body of work is in 2018, but when you take into account the Patriots' entire body of work and understanding how Kansas City has fallen short in the playoffs many times. I mean, my goodness, this is the first time they're hosting the AFC Championship, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But I think that looks very enticing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing New Orleans and the Rams. I mean, the Rams, even though that front didn't necessarily show up a ton in terms of, sacking Dak Prescott and making... I thought that the Dallas line held up okay from pass protection standpoint. Certainly Zeke Elliott didn't have he had a very forgettable game, so they didn't run the ball. But knowing what that Rams front can do, and how about the fact that the Rams had 2 100-yard rushers in a playoff game? I mean, you don't hear about that anymore. I mean, that's just not a formula you see in the NFL very often anymore. So... and let's face it, I mean, give the Saints credit for getting off the mat and doing what they needed to do to win the game on Sunday after Philly punched them in the mouth in the first quarter.
Oh, they were in jeopardy, right?
Yeah,
and that was the way the Eagles were going to win, was come out and score 2 touchdowns and control the game early. But, there is the resolve of a Breeze or a Brady that they can do it, and we're sitting here scratching our heads about Lamar Jackson far more than we are about Joe Flacco with the ability to win those kind of games and come back from 14-0. You have to be able to do that, and it doesn't reflect well upon the Saints that they fell behind in that way, but it's if you're giving me $1 right now, I would really expect we're going to see the Saints in Atlanta 2 weeks from now. I don't know how I take $1 and bet it against Tom Brady until I see this kid go out and do it at home.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I mean, like I said, on paper, you would look at the stats and look at what they did this year, and you'd say, oh, yeah, I'll definitely take Kansas City, just based on this year. But it's definitely going to be different. But I think the Saints definitely have to play better than they did on Sunday. I don't think there's any question about that. If you fall behind 14-0 to the Rams, then that could be a little bit of a different animal with that running game. I mean, how about C.J. Anderson? I mean, what a story. This guy with, 3 or 4 different teams this year. I mean, we know what he was in Denver at one point, but to come in there off the street and give them the lift that they've needed with Todd Gurley kind of ailing late in the season, I mean, it's just given them a really impressive 1-2 punch. But, I mean, I could see any of these 4 teams, and the one thing that you do like about this, and the league has to like about this, is you're either going to have the old guard against the old guard with Breeze against Brady, or you're going to have a young buck against an old guard scenario with either one of those two. Or, and this is the one that I think would be really enticing from a big picture standpoint, that Monday night game that we had between the Rams and the Chiefs early in the season when they were putting up Madden video game numbers offensively. The thought of having that rematch in the Super Bowl and a third-year and a second-year quarterback going at it, that's exciting for the NFL from a big-picture not that this league needs to grow because it's as popular as it's ever been. When you see the TV ratings, I get it with some of the attendance, and we've talked about that a lot here in Baltimore. But to have two young quarterbacks go at it with those two offenses, I think there's a lot of excitement with any of these potential matchups, acknowledging that, yes, a lot of people will roll their eyes that the Patriots are in it again, but hey, it also makes it fun that you can root against the Patriots, right? I mean, we always talk about that, with the Yankees in baseball. When they get eliminated, there's kind of that letdown because you can't root against them now. So I think any of these four combinations would be intriguing to various degrees, and I think certainly could provide some really fun matchups for Atlanta.
Well, you know me, I'm selfish about it. Like, who's going to be in Atlanta? What fan bases are going to be there? The Patriots don't really show up anymore, so the Chiefs thing would be wild. And, obviously, New Orleans shows up, they can drive over. And on the flip side, I don't know what the hell the L.A. Rams are, right? Like, I was out in Los Angeles for a couple of days last month. I saw the bowl all filled up. It certainly looked like a really cool environment. My wife was asking me how many people were at the game, and I said, I probably as many as they want, and I don't know how many that they actually sell. I said I know the place probably would seat 110,000 if you cram people in there. And I guess they stopped selling tickets at around 80,000 or whatever it is. They called it 77,000. But I thought, that had it had a calling for Pat Summerall for me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of neat, because we're never going to have a game at Memorial Stadium again or RFK or the old Giant. There's very little of that left. And to have a little bit of that, I know the Ravens are going to play out there next year. I'm really looking forward to seeing my first game at the Coliseum.
That's pretty cool. There's no question. And, they had, 77,187, I think, was the paid attendance. I actually, there was a lot of talk, and this kind of speaks to how the game went. I think the Cowboys had quite a few of those fans there. I mean, when you look at the facts that...
Oh, every time they did something, there was a very, very... I mean, there were 30,000 Cowboy fans there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was... I didn't think it was more Cowboys fans than Rams fans there, because, the Rams, unlike the Chargers, they have the advantage of they did have a footprint there as a long time ago. Certainly, but they did have...
Everybody's grandfather was a Rams fan, right? Literally.
Yeah. And, it's not as though they had...
Hey, Aikman talked about during the game, growing up a Rams fan, right?
Right. And look, certainly you think back to the Deacon Jones era, and certainly there hadn't been a whole lot to write home about, when you got into the 80s, into the 90s, certainly. But there had been some tradition before that, and the fact that they had at least been there. So, they at least have some kind of base, as much as you can have in L.A., because L.A. is just that kind of a market where if you're not hot, no one's paying attention to you. So, fortunately for them, they've been really good, and it's worked out for them, getting a young quarterback and certainly having Sean McVay, who is, I don't even want to say the flavor of the month. I just think he's a really good football coach. And I think he's proven that. He's proven that with his chops.
And everyone loves his assistants. They love his children.
Yeah,
it's almost like horses,
right?
It's almost like breeding a horse.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, you think about these coaching trees, and yet you're going to have a guy who's in his early 30s. Before too long, he's going to have a coaching tree. And especially if he ends up actually winning something here over the next few years. But it's definitely been interesting to see that. I think, if football is going to work in L.A., with one team, certainly two teams, there's a lot of skepticism there. But if the Rams can at least work, it seems like they have a good framework in place there. Seems like, okay, it wasn't 100,000 at the Coliseum on Saturday night, but they had a lot of people there, and they got to see the hometown team win. And I think the Rams, even though they're clearly going to be the underdog against the Saints, I'm in agreement with you on there. With that, I still think they have a really good chance because I think they have playmakers on both sides of the ball, and that's what you need. You need guys to make great plays for you. One thing that really jumped out that I really see that the Ravens needed, the Ravens played great defense throughout the 2018 season. There's no question about that, but I just saw the number of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball for these teams whether it was a Michael Thomas doing unbelievable things, whether it was a James White just catching passes out of the backfield and being a successful yak guy for the Patriots. The Ravens need more of that.
Aaron Donald taking over a game, and Ndamukong Suh earning all the money the Lions get. I mean, there were big performers over the weekend, right? I mean, we thought for a minute maybe Nick Foles was that guy again. I mean, he sort of kind of had that opportunity. And then there's the GOAT, right? I mean, Alshon Jeffrey can't get on the plane back to Philly at the end, right?
Yeah, and then it came out, I guess, one of his team, I think Lane Johnson actually outed the fact that Alshon Jeffrey was playing with broken ribs. He's a really good receiver. I think he had only dropped a couple balls all year, but he dropped the pass at the wrong time, and that's something that you have to live with for the entire offseason. Now, it helps if you're the Eagles because there's still plenty of shine on that Super Bowl ring from last year, but that's heroes and goats are made this time of year, and
they're not Chris-going polls in Philly this week, are they?
No. But hey, at the very least, they gave us the most entertaining game of the weekend, which Indianapolis did not give Kansas City a game. The Chargers certainly did not give New England a game, and the Cowboys, it wasn't a blowout, but you never really felt like they were seriously going to challenge after about midway through the second quarter, after the Rams kind of started to take control of that game.
So I started to go through these games over the weekend, and I felt like, Rex isn't coaching, and I know Pagano just got a job in Chicago, and obviously Brian's with us on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation, and Marvin's fired now, and, it's sort of like who's left, right? And then I'm like, all right, well, Chargers, Ken Wisenhunt's there. There's certainly a little bit of an angle there. The Patriots, is like nobody with the Patriots, and then all of a sudden Albert McClellan falls on a football, and I'm like, oh, that's right. So okay, there's Burt. That's cool. And then you see the Colts, and you're like, well, there's a Frank Reich Maryland connection there. And obviously Chuck's out of there as of last year. And Kansas City. I'm always rooting for Andy Reid and whatnot. But then I see like the Rams, and there's John Fossil on the sidelines, and I see the Philadelphia Eagles, and like totally forgot Haloti Winata was there. Corey Graham still running around. Jimmy Schwartz is there. Then you see the Saints, and there's Mike Nolan. Right? So there's all of these sort of Raven things, and obviously half the Eagles front office and Joe Douglas and those guys are all there as well. But, there's a little sprinkling of Raven stuff in various places. At least I think so.
Yeah, and I think especially for the successful organizations around the NFL, you're going to find that. I mean, this is a copycat league. I mean, we're seeing that so much. I mean, we see that so much this time of year with all the hirings, and I coined it musical chairs of coaching that we get in early January where, this coordinator goes somewhere to become a head coach, and then in a couple years, if it doesn't work out, he becomes a coordinator elsewhere, and then his assistants branch out and scatter. I mean, you find that, and the Ravens are one of those teams, even if you look at the last 5 or 6 years and say, okay, it hasn't been quite what it had been before that, but over the last 2 decades, there's a lot of winning there, a lot of success, and you see that with the teams that are successful. I mean, you find people from New England scattered. You'll find people from Pittsburgh scattered. You'll find people from Green Bay scattered, whether you're talking players or assistants. I mean, just the way it works. I mean, this is, and it's not always a good thing, but when you're a winner, you get opportunities that maybe you don't even deserve after a while, but you're going to keep getting those opportunities because you won at some point. And someone that might be an up-and-comer, and someone might be a brilliant assistant coach that just happens to be working for a losing team, and they might struggle or they might find themselves out of the league. So, I mean, with the fact that the Ravens have been as successful as they've been for the last 2 decades, yeah, there's going to be some of that. And the good part of that is when you're not in the playoffs at this point, you try to gravitate to a couple of those names and try to feel good for them. And as much as I know no Ravens fans are going to be rooting for it, if the Patriots in a few weeks, heaven forbid, are raising another Lombardi trophy, then Albert McClellan will have another Super Bowl ring, and you'll try to take some small morsel of satisfaction out of that while holding your nose otherwise to the thoughts of Tom Brady and Belichick having another one. But it's just the nature of the beast. This league it's not coined not for long for nothing. I mean, people come and go and move on and are fired and hired elsewhere, and it's just the way this league works. And it's really a credit to, I suppose, to those who are able to hang around as long as they do, and they end up with a lot of stickers on their suitcase after a while.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke at on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. I am out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. With you come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Made a stop over the weekend. I gave the King a ring. I stopped and saw Paul King. He wasn't there, but Rita was there, the whole crew. Johnny Bev took care of me as well. Lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. I got my favorite wine, and I'm being honest. I picked this bottle up sometimes out of town for as much as $18, $21 a bottle. $11.99 a bottle. I stocked up. I got 4 bottles of my favorite Malbec. King Discount Liquors. Johnny Bev even checks off on my wine recommendations now. I have become a red wine connoisseur. I also picked up a delicious Canadian lager that I'm going to go unmentioned because they don't sponsor me, so phooey on them, but I drink it anyway because I like beer. I like booze. Candy is dandy, but liquor's quicker. King Discount Liquors. Get on out to Pulaski Highway and give the King a ring. Our morning newspaper delivers digitally to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's always $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Guaranteed. It's a new year, a new you. Make it happen at Planet Fitness. There's one right around the corner. Get the inspiration at planetoftriumphs.com. That's there for you as well. Also, the Maryland Jockey Club sponsoring our morning newspaper. The entries on the front of WNST.net as well as in the morning newspaper. And, of course, the track is phenomenal. The weather holding up here. I know we had a little snow over the weekend. Things are going to be fine by the weekend. Get down there and watch the ponies do their thing. We're getting ready for Triple Crown. Getting ready for the weather to break. And, of course, it's warm inside the fantastic new sports bar down at Laurel Park. Go see what it's all about. I promise you, it's a better experience than you remember it. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Streaming live at our Facebook as well as our YouTube, WNSTV channel. And my man, Dennis Kolatzos, will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. And I am a participant in that on Thursday. We'll get you ready for the championship games this weekend in New Orleans and Kansas City, as well as the rebroadcast on Sunday morning, heard from 3 until 5 on Thursday live. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.